All right, all right. Welcome back to the Super Bowl edition of the Behind the Back podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Marcos Conan Negron, and beside me, as always, is Ben, the Jets Rets. Ben, how you feeling?
Nervous, man. It's Super Bowl weekend. This is what all season long I've been wanting to get to, and I've been hoping that I could, talk about the Niners and just going into a Super Bowl. And now that the week's here, I'm kind of nervous talking about it. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, we got to distract ourselves a bit last night. We got to go watch the Kings play. Shout out to ADP for providing us a Plaza Box ticket. For those who didn't see our Instagram, we were posting, quarter by quarter, how the emotional downfall that was losing to the worst team in the NBA. The
Yeah,
experience was great. The seats itself was really cool. I didn't even know that spot existed. But I only got to do the Keegan Murray chant for the intro, and then he finished with 0 points. So it was that kind of
yeah,
night.
that was wild to me. It's at this point, Marcos, I think it's safe to say you're cursed. Because every home game you've gone to since the beam became a thing, like we haven't won.
Yeah.
Um, and you've only ever gotten to do the Keegan Murray chant over your television screen. So
Yeah.
it's kind of trash. I'm not gonna lie. I think we talked about it last night, and I'm gonna say it out loud now. You're banned from the Golden One Center from here on out. Like you can no longer go to these games.
Yep. It's really disappointing. I'm just destined to not see the beam live. And even on games that the team has won, and I'm like passing by Sacramento, I've never seen it. I'm just like, this sucks. I haven't seen anything yet. So it's
Yeah,
disappointing. Maybe we'll get there one day. Maybe the curse will break. But, in honor of that, that we'll go into what we're talking about here. So obviously, it is Super Bowl weekend, as we mentioned, and we are going to be breaking down why we think. So Ben's going to talk about mainly the Niners and why he believes that they're either going to win or either going to lose. And I, in my Eagles jersey, I am avoiding any Niners $30 jersey this weekend in respect. And I'm hopping on the Chiefs Kingdom bandwagon for the weekend. So y'all can ride with me. Hopefully, I don't bring that cursed energy, but hey, who knows? That's the whole point. So I'm going to give my reasons for why I think the Chiefs are either going to win or lose. But we'll start with you. How are you feeling? What would give your point? Let's start on the positive side. What have you been digging into this week? What have you seen? What have you feeling from this team going into the game?
I'm trying really hard not to feel like we're at a disadvantage being in Las Vegas right now. But all week long, I've been hearing that like the Niners were kind of gypped out of a practice field. The Chiefs wouldn't move around their practice windows to accommodate for the Niners to practice inside of the facility. And so the Niners are having to practice on what is considered to be almost like a sponge turf. And it's just, it makes me think like, how rigged is it? No, like
Okay.
I'm not gonna go down that route, but
No, no.
it is a little like upsetting in that regard because the Chiefs get to practice on what's going to be the closest to the actual field condition, whereas the Niners have something they're going to walk into this game kind of with a new ground underneath their feet. You know what I mean? Like they don't have that much experience playing in that stadium to begin with. They've played their one game. The Chiefs have played there 3 times. So um,
4 times actually.
is it 4 times? Yeah,
Yeah, it's bad.
it's something to be said, in terms of having experience in a stadium. Like that goes a long way. And last year, obviously, field conditions came up in the Super Bowl. I am a little bit I'm a little bit disappointed thinking about last year and thinking about this year. I'm disappointed in the NFL with how they've handled the last 2 Super Bowls in terms of field conditions when you have all year long knowing that a Super Bowl is going to be played in wherever stadium, right? And you can't at least properly set up the accommodations for both teams to practice in the facilities. And on top of that, like you can't make sure that the field condition is in the best, shape possible. Like those kind of things have bugged me. But honestly, like putting those things aside, as I kind of stated early on in this episode, like I am super excited to be talking about Niners in the Super Bowl. Like all year long I was pushing and saying like this team has to go to the Super Bowl. It's like Super Bowl or bust, right? And it's still that case. They've made it this far. They overcame a lot of storylines that were going into the playoffs. Like they can't come from behind. Like Brock Purdy can't lead a game. Lead a team down the field to take the victory at the end. Like there were so many storylines going into the playoffs that they overcame, and they kind of shifted those tides. And that's, to me, I know it probably isn't considered like a Cinderella story, you know what I mean? Because the Niners were favorites to win the Super Bowl all year long for the most part.
And their favorite
But
right now. So.
right, and they are favored going into the game, but from like a fan perspective like that, where you have this second year quarterback who honestly his story isn't celebrated enough. And I think that's probably due to toxic Niner fans, if I had to be honest. Like we push Brock being something maybe a little bit more than he actually is, but that's only because he doesn't get enough credit, where it's actually due. So his story just isn't celebrated enough. Like second year quarterback, leading his team to 2 NFC championship games, obviously winning one of them in his second year and taking his team to the Super Bowl and overcoming a lot of adversity along the way in his second year. Like it's awesome to see, and it's such a cool story. And the kid's nothing but humble. Like his interviews this week, some of the questions that have come out of Super Bowl week from media have been terrible.
That usually happens too. They ask the dumbest questions sometimes.
They asked Patrick Mahomes like, "Do your best Kermit the Frog impersonation." I'm just like, what kind of a question is that?
What are we
like,
doing?
Really? Yeah,
they came all this way just to give him the. Yeah, I agree.
But the legit questions that have been thrown at Purdy, like he's handled them so well, and he's just such a humble kid, and he has every reason to be cocky. You know what I mean? Like he has every reason to be like, "No, I'm good at what I do. I don't care what you guys say." But he never says that. He might say something along those lines, but it's still in a humble manner. And he's the quarterback that this team has needed, and it is so exciting to see that story develop. And I'm stoked to have him as a quarterback at this point. Like, win or lose the Super Bowl, I genuinely am at a point where he could throw this game, and I will still have this guy's back going into next year. Like in the moment, I'll be like, this guy's trash, like low key, right?
Everything was right.
Right. Like we've made it this far, and you do this, you throw this kind of a game, but like 2 weeks later, I'm going to be like, no, that's our guy. Like he's in his second year. He's still learning. He's got so much more to learn. Like he's going to develop that much more. And it's exciting to see. So storyline wise, the Super Bowl run that the Niners have had has been nothing but adversity. Coming from behind in both games against the Packers and then against the Lions. That Lions game they tied an NFL record, which was also by the Niners, of the biggest comeback in NFC championship history. So yeah, just an exciting run. I'm stoked. I'm ready for this Super Bowl, man.
Yeah, that's great. It's hard, when you think about the Niners journey here, and it's crazy to me. I said this when, in regards to like kind of how I thought they were going to view the Niners when they started kind of having to get these games that were close, like in the Packers and the Lions games. It felt like they should have won, a little bit more convincingly. And I thought going into the Super Bowl that the Chiefs were going to be favored. And I thought, or even the Ravens in that situation were going to be favored. And I was a little bit surprised that the Niners were and still are favored in the sense, like, we can go through it. And, some people might view it as simple as, oh, it's Patrick Mahomes versus Brock Purdy. And that should be enough of a gap. I think that's one thing when that it's a little underrated. Like the Niners have some veterans that have been there through, they have a lot of guys that were there the last time, but you also have a lot of new faces that haven't been there before. And I think you can kind of see that era of, and there's nothing wrong with this. Like it's a part of the atmosphere. It's a part of the Super Bowl, but you see some of these guys kind of enjoying the moment. They're like, whoa, this is Vegas. Whoa, this is the Super Bowl week. Like this is intense. Like, and the Chiefs, when you see the way they kind of talk and react, it's almost as, and the way they carry themselves, it's like we were just here a year ago. Like it's not, we've been here, we've kind of been here, done that. This is almost like another game for them, which I think, experience matters. And having the vets that the Niners do, I think is really crucial because it can help a lot of these guys in the moment. But some of your key vets like Trent, CMC, they weren't here. This is their like first Super Bowl, and
Ever.
those nerves are kind of hard to ignore it the first time. So it's always, that's something to consider. And the fact is, the Niners do need to take advantage of the fact that, there are people, they want to hang on to the fact that they can be the underdogs, but they're not, and it's frustrating. I saw this stat on First Things First, where the Niners are going to match the Chiefs of 2021 for being favored in every single game throughout the season. So there wasn't a game that they weren't a favorite, and they did a stat of those teams, and the 2022 Eagles were actually one of those the top 5 teams that have been favored the most, and they actually didn't end up winning those Super Bowls. So I found that to be pretty interesting. And Patrick Mahomes as an underdog in general is just dangerous. He's 9-3 straight up, and he's 10-1 and 1 against the spread. So it's like, and they're kind of playing with like we can call it in Vegas terms, they're playing with house money. They're in a can't lose situation because it's not going to hurt Patrick Mahomes if they lose. Everyone thinks the Niners are good, and if the game is a good game, people are going to be like, the Chiefs overachieved this year because of the receivers, the drops, all this narrative that was carried with them throughout the regular season. And then when the postseason, they're like, oh, it's just Patrick Mahomes. So it's like,
Yeah.
a little goalpost moving there. But for Brock, he's the Niners, like, same with the fan base, like you mentioned, like, there's more pressure, even though, like you said, they don't they almost forget that he is the second year guy, like that this is his first Super Bowl, and there's a lot of expectations coming in. So this is just like, this is going to be really interesting to see, because teams do this all the time. Like when you play one of the all-time greats, you they're across the field from you. You play a little different. You coach a little differently. The aspect of the game kind of changes, knowing that like, hey, we need to play absolutely perfect, or we might, be down way sooner, or like they can. I don't think there's going to be a moment where, if the Niners are ahead, that the Chiefs are really actually going to be nervous, or they're going to, they haven't felt like they've been there before. They've done this before. They were down 10 in both of the Super Bowls that they've won. So it's like, it's hard to really like bet against that. It's hard to not feel like that will always be looming as the game goes on. But I think, and you can, you can offer your take on this. For me, the only way I see, and you and I talked about this when we had some time at the game yesterday, but I think for me, the only way I see the Niners winning this game is if they find the answer to the Kansas City Chiefs defense and put up a good amount of points. Like I'm saying, if they don't eclipse like 28 points, then there's gonna be, the Chiefs are gonna be in it the whole time. But I think if they make this a shootout, the Chiefs are going to struggle a little bit to keep up, especially if the Niners defense is actually, getting stops and figuring out
Right.
Mahomes a bit and slowing down the offense enough. So I don't know how you feel in that sense, because you told me the stat where Brock is 20-0, right? In games where he puts up 20 or more points. But this year, the Chiefs defense has been undefeated when they hold their opponents to under 21 points. So it's like,
Mm.
you have these kind of conflicting forces here, and the Chiefs defense has been awesome. And Patrick Mahomes hasn't needed to be Patrick Mahomes this year. I think every
Yeah.
game there was like, we do passer rating, right? Passer rating is a nice way to tell like how well a quarterback kind of did during the course of a game or during the course of a season. And Brock has one of the best in NFL history with what was it? It was one something, right? Was it like 110-ish area, or like 10? I didn't know if it was like in the one teens or like 10 something.
Yeah. I think it was around 110.
Yeah, so that's considered excellent. And then
Right.
mediocre is considered, or like, 90 or 80. That's like, oh, you did okay, like you were fine. And Patrick Mahomes, every game that he's had at least an 80 or better, he's won. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, he doesn't need to be perfect to win, and that's what's scary about this year's version of the Chiefs.
Yeah, where I feel like the Niners can kind of play an advantage to their own hand is obviously you talked about the expectation, right? The the Chiefs, they don't have anything to lose. They made it in a season where they weren't expected to make it. Like we're looking back to the regular season for a second when the Kansas City Chiefs played the Buffalo Bills, and like there were some missed calls at the end of that game, and Patrick Mahomes just kind of blew up. Like he went off on Josh Allen, like when it was supposed to just be a handshake, good game at the end of the game, right? There was
I
some
remember that.
bad sportsmanship there. And that week, I remember seeing like and kind of feeling like this might not be like the Chiefs could be kind of out of the picture. Like obviously they're going to make the playoffs, but I don't think they'll make it that far. And
Hmm.
I know I wasn't in the minority when feeling that way. And then obviously as the playoffs ramped up and you saw them just open up these games and kind of dominate all the way through, right? It was just a it was like this, wow, okay, this is the same old Chiefs as always. And in their eyes, they have nothing to lose, right? So
Right.
on the other side of it, the Niners, they've been here too many times now and not gotten that sixth ring, that sixth Lombardi. So there's a lot of weight on this game for the 49ers. There's a lot of weight on this game for guys like Debo Samuel, guys like George Kittle, these players who have been on the stage with this same team before, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, like it's they do not want to have a repeat of what happened 4 years ago by any stretch.
Yeah.
And where I do have confidence in this Niners team is this season. I have seen a grit from this team when they are expected to get something done. They've done it. Whether it's get down the field and put ourselves in a winning situation, they've done it. Whether it's win a certain game against a Philadelphia Eagle team that absolutely demolished you last year, there was a lot of expectation, a lot of weight going into that matchup on the Niners side. The Eagles kind of were in that, we don't have anything to lose situation because they were like, we got the one that mattered. I don't know what you guys are tripping about. And
Right.
we're like, no, we got to get our get back here. Like this is for us. There's a lot of expectation. They came through and they dominated that game. Like the game against the Cowboys, and then obviously the game against the Lions, where it's like the Lions had nothing to lose, but the Niners had everything to lose, and they went down big. They went down 17 points. I can't stress it enough, and they made that comeback. And it has proven to me this season that when this Niners team feels that weight of we have to get this Super Bowl, we have to get this season, this game, this moment, we're gonna get it. And that to me is where I find the confidence. I know who's on the other side of the ball. And that team is damn good. They're scary. They can take you out at any given time, right? And it's in any given Sunday. Obviously, this is another Sunday, right? This is the biggest Sunday of the year. Every team tries to get to this point. So both teams feel a certain type of pressure. The Chiefs, with this core, have been on this stage way more than the Niners have.
Mhm.
So there is definitely an aspect of the Chiefs just having a little more experience on the stage. But this Niners team, man, it has to happen. There is a has to happen aspect of this game that I trust these boys. Like these guys, you can't not have their back right now as a Niners fan. And just as somebody who, if you look at the game from a non-statistical standpoint, if you look at the game from, momentum based, when you look at the game from storyline based and, things like that, like it actually kind of plays into the Niners' favor. And that's where I kind of find that confidence. And all season long, like you've brought more of the stats to this, to this podcast. And I've brought more like the storyline kind of thing and like, the feelings and stuff like that. And I'm gonna kind of bring that same attitude going into this game because it's just there's a trust with this team right now. Like I've seen them at their worst and I've seen them at their best, and I trust them in every aspect of that. So
No, that's completely fair. And and I'm not saying this in like in a negative way, because I understand exactly how you feel. And I felt that way, especially last year with the Eagles. I felt that way. I felt like we had shown that we could kind of figure anything out, any kind of situation we could come back from. And they showed that a lot at the beginning of the year before the collapse. And I was, when there was similarities with how the Niners were able to come back, and I was like, wow, I see a lot of that dominant Eagles team in that, with the victory, and the expectations were like, oh, this is still a young team. In a way, it's only because of the quarterback, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I really, you know, it really could come down. Like, people think that, like, when you look at the teams, and this game is going to be chock full of like Hall of Fame players by the end of this. This is the two best teams in football, and I'm glad it happened this way. As good as a story as the Lions could have been to make it here, or the Ravens, these were the two best teams in the league at the end of the year. At the end of the year, it just made more sense. And this is a huge game for a lot of people. I think there's more on the line for the Niners. I agree with you in that sense. I think Kyle Shanahan, this is his legacy game. The Niners are knocking on the door of what a few teams that were this great have done throughout the span. There have been quite a few examples, the Eagles included, in the early 2000s, where you're so close, you're knocking on the door so consistently, and you can never, and then you just can't kick the door down. And
Right.
I think the last team to be that, in that kind of situation, the Niners were the Eagles from 2001 to 2004, where they made it to three straight NFC championship games and then a Super Bowl, and they just weren't able to win the Super Bowl. And that, was kind of and then it kind of created the rest of Andy Reid's tenure before he went to Kansas City and became what he became. So it's going to be interesting, because if Kyle Shanahan does get this win, it's going to mean so much for his legacy as the most he will receive the credit of being the most innovative head coach of his generation, from like the 2010s to 2020s. And that's going to be really important. And I know. And then for Mahomes, it's obviously the GOAT conversation starts really kicking in. He would have had the most successful run within like a 5-6 year span in NFL history, and like that can't be ignored either. So it's I really like I love everything about just the football aspect of it. And I think for both teams, the emotion's going to be there. I think these teams are familiar with each other. They've played in the big game before. There are feelings that the Niners have that, the Chiefs are going to, run into. And the Chiefs can play the big brother in this game emotionally and say, hey, you guys are going to have to beat us. This is our game. You're going to have to come here and take it to us. And I think, like you said, there's been plenty of times this year where the Niners have had to step up, and they did. And it'll be interesting to see just, you know, which coach comes with a good game plan, which coach comes prepared, the most important matchup in this, the most important coaching matchup in this is going to be how each defensive coordinator handles this game. It's going to be Steve Spagnuolo versus Steve Wilkes, and
Yep.
who comes up with the better plan to stop the opposing offense. And it's going to be huge.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I do got to say too, Kyle Shanahan with the Niners is a perfect 7-0 when covering the spread in playoff games. In terms of um I think actually no, I'm sorry. He's 7-1 when covering the spread. His lone loss was against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl 4 years ago. But he had a different team then. He kind of had a
Way
different role
different.
then.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, when I say we had a different team, I did a little bit of digging this week. And we'll get into some nitty gritty reasons why the Niners and the Chiefs will win and lose, right? But my last point here is I did some digging, and I just went kind of position by position. Um, that 4 years ago, what that Niners team was versus this year.
Mm-hmm.
And from top to bottom, this is so much better of a team, the Niners. This is so much better of a team this year than it was then. And like, obviously George Kittle was the starting tight end at that point back then, but he's a better player now than he was. And it just it makes me feel like, because these guys have been on this stage and they've lost the big one, and then they made it to the NFC Championship last year, and it was a painful loss. To get every year and every time you hear any player talk about what it takes to get back to an NFC Championship, or rather a championship game versus the Super Bowl, like, it's one of the hardest things. It is so damn difficult to get back to these games, and the Niners have been knocking on that door for so long now. They recognize how hard it is, and at this point, like, they have no choice but to bring everything that they possibly can throughout all 60 minutes of this game. So on that note, I did want to get into some reasons why the Niners would win the Super Bowl, and also my reasons why the Niners would lose the Super Bowl. And obviously we talked about this before. You're going to bring some reasons why the Chiefs will win and why the Chiefs will lose. So let's start with the reasons why each team will win. Okay. So I'm going to start off by saying, I think my first reason why the Niners will win the Super Bowl is it starts on the ground. Christian McCaffrey. Kyle Shanahan, you have the most lethal running back in the league right now, and arguably in this decade. This guy can pretty much get yards after yards after contact. Like, it's a point with him. If you're not utilizing him at least 30 times plus in this game, you're not going to win this game. And when I look at the Kansas City defense, this is the best defense that they've had in the Mahomes era. Like, it's not close. No. They rank top 5, top 6 or 7 in most categories. Where they're really weak is on their zone run defense. Where the Niners are the best in the league is zone rushing. Kyle Shanahan knows how to draw up zone rushing plays. And he has a guy in Christian McCaffrey that can tear a defense apart single-handedly. Okay, we talked about how he's arguably more of an MVP candidate for this team than Brock is, right?
Right.
And that applies in this game. And I think on the other side of it, that's a reason why the Niners would lose this game. It's not one of my reasons, but it could be a reason. If you're not utilizing Christian in this game, Kyle, you worked so hard. He talked about all his career, he wanted to get Christian McCaffrey on his team. Why did you want to get Christian McCaffrey, Kyle? Are you only going to use him X amount of times in this game, or are you going to absolutely run this guy into the dirt to try and get the Super Bowl win? Because I guarantee you, Christian, he's okay being run into the dirt for this game. He wants this, man. This is his first Super Bowl appearance. And in a running back career, it's limited. Like, he's already over the average running back career length, right? And so you got to imagine he's got to be on his downside soon. Maybe it's 2 years from now, maybe it's next year, right? Depends on injuries. But he's ready. Like, he's had some time to start to going into the playoffs. Like, he had a little bit of rest, and in the playoffs he's looked good. There's been times where Kyle hasn't used him like he should, and that's where I'm nervous. So to win this game, you got to use Christian McCaffrey. My second reason is turnovers. Like, the reasons why the Niners will win this is by having absolutely no turnovers. If we can hold on to the ball, Kansas City, like, they absolutely feast on turnovers. This season, they're one of the top teams in getting points on the board after a turnover. And in a game like this, where we talk about experience, they're going to view that as just a cookie on a plate full of desserts. Like, it's just, oh, thank you so much. You know, let me add to the reasons why I should take this victory. Like, you can't give them anything like that. It's got to be the cleanest game that we play all season long.
Agreed.
My last reason for why the Niners would win is we just have to jump out early. You got to jump out ahead early in this game, and you can't look back. It's foot on the gas the entire time. Coach Shanahan, he has lost his Super Bowls after having at least a 10-point lead in both. One was a lot more than 10 points. And I think that's kind of like a trauma for him in a lot of ways. And I think that in this game, if he does jump out early, he's not going to look back. It's
Yeah.
It's going to get to that point where, all season long, how we talked about why does he take his foot off the accelerator? Like, we're not going to talk about that at the end of this game if the Niners jump out early, because he's not going to let that happen a third time.
I do think for you, and I think this is where your first point kind of piggybacks your second point. When you mentioned earlier that this version of the Niners is better than the version that made it to the Super Bowl last time, you guys have the most dynamic running back in the NFL. You didn't have that last time. Now, Raheem Mostert was great, but it's the level of things that you guys can do in this offense with him is what makes this team special. And now, if you guys are up 10, you have the best running back in the league who can help you hold this lead. So you should use him that way. No, that's a great point to make.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are my reasons why. There's so many more reasons why the Niners would win, but like for me, those are the driving forces in this game. Like, it's Christian McCaffrey. Limit your mistakes. I mean, I would say limit your turnovers, but you can't have turnovers. That's the thing. Yeah. So it's limiting mistakes that put you in a potential to turn the ball over. And then just jump out ahead early. Like, if we start with the ball, take advantage of that. Jump out to a 7-0. It can't be 3. You can't give Kansas City momentum early in this game. And I'll get into why in a little bit when we talk about reasons why the Niners could lose this game. But I want to hear from you reasons why you believe the Chiefs would win.
Okay, so it's simple. I'm just kidding. So it is more than just Patrick Mahomes. I think the main reason that the Chiefs win this game is the defense. It is, and we've spoken on this. This defense is the best that Mahomes has ever had. It's top 5 in the entire league this year, full of young guys, and the way they play defense, it's something that will challenge Purdy. And if you make him uncomfortable in the biggest game of the year, now during the regular season, Purdy was excellent against the blitz. And this Kansas City defense loves to blitz. They will challenge your best receivers and play one-on-one and press coverage. And they've been right most of the year in that aspect. So their guys are locked down. Now they are without one of their best defensive ends in Charles Omenihu. That's, he tore his ACL. That sucks, but he wasn't the focal point of that defense. Their defense is, we have good linebacker play, better corner play, and we have an all-star, all-pro defensive tackle in Chris Jones. He can mess this whole game up if the Niners aren't careful. So he's someone you can scheme around. So it'll be interesting. And Karlaftis is a nice little piece. He can get in there and create issues against McGlinchey. That'll be a huge matchup too. So this defense can cause problems. And if they throw off Brock Purdy's timing, make him uncomfortable, force him into an interception or two. You referenced the turnovers, and I thought that was a really good point. Again, on First Things First, they talked about teams that win the Super Bowl out of the, what is this? Is this Super Bowl 58? Correct? I'm pretty sure, right? So if it's out of the Super Bowl, out of the 58 Super Bowls, of the teams that won the turnover battle, 39 of them won the game. That's a very high percentage. For those who tied the turnover battle, if it was just an even turnover battle, the eventual Super Bowl winner won like 11 of those games, and those who just straight up lost the turnover battle only won 7 of those. So you're just at a major disadvantage when you give the other team more chances. Field position is going to be huge in this game. Mahomes is the least sacked QB in the NFL right now in the playoffs by a ridiculous margin. So field position is going to play a huge deal. But the Chiefs, if they can create pressure on Brock is going to have to try and make some incredible scrambles, but the linebackers that the Niners are playing this time are much better than the Detroit Lions linebackers. Nick Bolton, Drew Tranquil, these guys can keep up. So it'll be very interesting to see just the kind of defense and disguises that Spags really dishes out for Brock. This is going to test him more, and Kyle Shanahan, to the level that, it'll be interesting. I'm excited. That's my favorite matchup for this game. And it will, for me, it's the biggest reason for why Kansas City can pull this off. The other reason will be, I want to say it's easily Patrick Mahomes, but that's a little unfair. I think the main reason that they win this game is the fact that Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice step up and they just carry the load from Mahomes. And it's not even like they're going to put up huge numbers. The key for the Chiefs in this game will be to keep possessions going. Just keep the Niners offense off the field, chunk it up bit by bit, keep it a lower scoring game, and that's what this Chiefs team is good at. And I think they'll keep it low, but also just keep time of possession, and they're going to be able to just do what they do. Patrick Mahomes is going to game manage the heck out of this game, because that's going to be the best strategy needed. The Niners defense is really good at preventing those big plays. That's the whole point. So that's why you only rush 4 guys, and that's why you have Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw and Travarius Ward, and like this the whole point. So, but I do believe that Rashee Rice is going to have a Deebo Samuel-esque effect, and he'll be lined up against somebody like Ambry Thomas, and he's just going to be able to create a big play, things of that nature. So I buy that the whole narrative this whole year was that these Chiefs don't have enough weapons, and I believe it's going to be the weapons that get the job done offensively to seal the deal. So that would be my reasons why the Chief wins this game, mainly.
Great points indeed. So on that note then, what are the reasons the Chiefs would lose this game?
So the Chiefs will lose this game very much like the Niners would, in the sense that I believe it's going to be turnovers. The games that they have lost this year have been because they have lost the turnover battle by a very nice amount. And that's going to be key, because over the past 2 postseasons entirely, Patrick Mahomes hasn't thrown an interception. He hasn't thrown a single turnover worthy play, according to PFF. Like, he plays like it. Negative plays don't exist with Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. And if the Niners can create some of those negative plays, it would be so poetic out of anybody to get interception in this game if Charvarius Ward was the one to get an interception on his former team, who he won the Super Bowl with against these Niners. Like, it would full circle type thing. I wouldn't be surprised if that was like, if those were the turnovers, it'd be that, or it'd be something like a Travis Kelce fumble or a Pacheco fumble that's just like you wouldn't normally see. So turnovers would be the main reason this team loses. But the second, the other main reason I think would be if the Niners defense just gets to Mahomes. Like, it's not even like forcing turnovers, is if they can create just negative plays that don't exist for this team. If they do those things and get pressure on Mahomes, the times that teams were able to get home on Mahomes, those are the games that they lose. And there's very few ways you can beat this team now. And it really comes down to getting Mahomes uncomfortable, which is almost impossible, and forcing this team, not just Mahomes, this team, into turnovers. So if the Niners can control that and control field position, get a couple sacks, set guys up, like, keep this a field goal style game where the Niners are able to punch in points, that's where the Chiefs have the kicking advantage in this game. Obviously Jake Moody's a huge factor in this game too versus Harrison Butker, and that's going to play an advantage into decisions. But another reason they would lose this game would be if Andy Reid does something with poor clock management, because that is something he is known to do. He has gotten better with it since he's had Patrick. He's not afraid to take as many risks, but I wouldn't be surprised if they lose because he bets on Patrick, which is normally the right decision, and it doesn't work out. I could see that happening in this game, where maybe on that last play, there's a little bit of pressure, or it would also be poetic if it was a drop ball. So if all those narratives that came back to start that was going with them throughout the course of the season that we hadn't seen all playoffs happen in this game, I wouldn't be surprised either. So those would be my main reasons for why the Chiefs lose.
Yeah, I think those are good. I think the main reasons why the Niners would lose is in this playoffs alone, Kansas City has started hot and they haven't really looked back. Um, they scored first in all three games leading up to the Super Bowl. Miami couldn't respond when it happened against them. Buffalo fought when it happened, but they just couldn't finish the comeback. They never can against the Chiefs. Um, and then Baltimore really wasn't used to being down like that, like they were against Kansas City. And obviously, it wasn't like necessarily a blowout at any point, but the Ravens never felt like they could get anything going.
Exactly.
And that was something that all season long, like they never really struggled to do.
Yeah, they were averaging 30 points too. So it's
right. Like, so it's obviously a testament to that Kansas City defense too. So now, one thing that the Ravens didn't do in that game was run the damn ball, which they'd done so well all season long. So they kind of shot themselves in the foot there too.
Right. And that's part of the product where I believe, like, again, they played thinking, holy crap, Patrick Mahomes is on the other side of the field.
Mm-hmm.
How do we play football again? Like, that's where I'm
Right.
like, so yeah, keep going.
And it's legit. Sense. It's legit, 100%. I mean, he is going to be a Hall of Famer. He might go down as the GOAT. Like, it kind of depends on what happens in these Super Bowls. But yeah, playing from behind is something that the Niners in the regular season, they weren't very good at. And in the playoffs, this is something they flipped a script on. This Super Bowl, this is the Super Bowl, and these teams are here for a reason. Like, these are, you alluded to it, these are the best two teams in football right now. Yeah, and because they're on this stage, it's more a testament to, like, obviously the personnel on the teams, but you got to look at the coaching as well. And that kind of leads me to my next reason how the Niners can lose this game. And that's that Andy Reid has more experience on this stage than Shanahan. You talked about how the defensive coordinators is going to be more crucial in this game. I do agree in some ways, but you just can't turn down that experience aspect, right? And Shanny was the offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons when they blew a 28-3 second half lead. And yeah, that was rough to watch. Not even like as a fan of that team, but you see an absolute fall like that and you're like, wow, I could never imagine like being a part of that. And then fast forward 3 years later, Shanahan's the head coach of the 49ers who make it to the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. You have a 10-point fourth quarter lead and the Chiefs come back and beat you by more than the cover. Like, they covered. So yeah, it definitely draws that to mind, like that experience aspect. Andy Reid, he'll be making his fifth appearance in the Super Bowl, having won 2 and lost 2. So obviously the two teams that he beat are the Niners and the Eagles. So we're here hating Andy Reid.
I still love him.
Yeah, I respect
former
him.
Eagles ties. I can't, I love him too 100%.
Much. Even though he lost Super Bowl with you guys.
Yeah.
But
yep.
Yeah, but yeah, I look at the coaching, man, and I'm like, you look at Andy Reid having been on this stage this many times, and then obviously just it's good enough winning one. I say good enough. It's enough experience winning one.
Yep.
He's won 2 of them. Shanahan doesn't have a win on this stage yet. And so that is one reason, like, you could see the Niners taking some risks in this game that they wouldn't normally take regular season and just under the Shanahan era, right? Because Shanny's got a lot to lose in this game. There is a lot on his there is a storyline for him now where if he loses this game, it'll forever hinder his career. Like, he will be 0-3 at that point in Super Bowls, and that's not good to have as a coach at any stage, whether you're an offensive coordinator or a head coach. So
I did have a question, because And I get it because like we've mentioned before, like there have been teams that have been this successful that don't win it at any point. And Andy Reid was one of those coaches who was in that kind of position before, and before he found his Mahomes and everything. But my question to you as a fan, if the worst happens and the Niners don't win this game, does Shanahan then become like, not, I wouldn't say the hot seat, but does the thought of the hot seat start to come up a little bit in your mind? Like, because if it repeats history and next year you guys have another great run and ultimately fall short and it just continues, how much more? And I've asked you this a couple times in a couple different ways, but now that we're here, now that the game is here, just how much okay, so let's put on a scale. 10, I would fire him next year if it doesn't go well. Or, 1, I'm fine if we lose this game, like I'm going to be heartbroken, but he's still my coach and I trust him for the future. Where would you be on that scale of like,
It's a 5, and I'm in between it because making it. I mean, I just talked about how tough it is to make it to a Super Bowl, right?
mm-hmm,
And to just let alone make it to a championship game for your conference. Um, and Shanahan in this era has done it a few times now, and he's also had some winning seasons, some very winning seasons when his guys are all healthy. The seasons where he was losing, he either didn't have weapons to use, like we were still drafting and still building, or we had historical levels of injuries. And so I look at his tenure here, and it's pretty damn successful when he's got his cards in his hand ready to play. Um, it's hard for me to think in any situation, shape, or form that a coach could be put on a hot seat for continuously leading his team to at least a championship, a conference championship game, if not the Super Bowl, and not winning, because you're still getting those chances. And
it's true,
getting the chance is like
rare.
90%, yeah, of the actual win itself.
Mm-hmm,
Like, not even, it's 100%. Like,
yeah.
just getting on that stage and giving yourself a chance is hard enough.
Mm-hmm,
And that's something that so many coaches in this league right now can't do. So I look at it and I'm like, okay, yeah, let's fire Shanahan. Well, who's out there right now that we can go get that we can really trust can lead our team back like Shanahan has these last 2 seasons?
mm-hmm.
Like, I don't see a scenario where, even if we get blown out in this game, like, I don't see a scenario where I put him on the hot seat personally.
Okay, I see that
It would depend on next year at
for
that
sure.
point. Like, if we're middle of the pack, scraping by, and then we make it to the playoffs and we're like a second round exit, yeah, I
While
think
being
it's safe to
healthy.
say, right. I think it's safe to say at that point you're on the hot seat, and
Mm-hmm.
it might be really time to evaluate our coaching.
Do you think it has something, do you think there's something to say about Kyle Shanahan with the quarterbacks that, he's had, right? So Andy Reid and Bill Belichick, who have had a historic level of success, have had the two greatest quarterbacks of their
Yep.
generations, right? Do you think it says something to Kyle Shanahan? And I don't mean this with any disrespect, but do you believe that, like, obviously we can acknowledge now based on the way the Niners play that Brock Purdy is a much better, he can provide more to this offense than Jimmy G ever could. The offense can run differently because Brock can do plays out of structure the way Jimmy never could, and he takes more risks than Jimmy could. So Brock is a objectively better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo at
Yeah.
this stage early. And I know it's early for Brock; he still has plenty of time. But do you think that Kyle Shanahan is getting more with less? Obviously, the weapons are still there, but quarterback is the most important position. Do you think that he, you know, it's a weird hypothetical. I'm not going to throw any other quarterback in there, but do you think he gets punished a little bit when, like, a little too much criticism when he has Brock Purdy versus some of these coaches who have had insane level quarterbacks who have, you know, who just seem more talented at this stage. Obviously, Brock's a second year, so that I'm trying to, you're playing with a second year quarterback, and yet
Yeah.
you're in the Super Bowl. So it's like,
Yeah. I will say this. Yes, he's had some quarterbacks in his career that are pretty subpar. I would say Jimmy is like the par line, right?
mhm.
Like he is as average gets in the NFL. I think that's pretty safe to say at this point. Um, can't believe I defended that guy week one. Anyway,
You do what you got
you
to
know,
do.
right? So I look at that and I'm like, where has Shanahan really excelled as a coach? Like what aspect of how he coaches a game? And he's a genius when it comes to drawing up plays on the ground, right? And like he's always, I mean, he took Raheem Mostert and gave Raheem like 6 touchdowns in one game against the Packers. Like,
Yeah.
it was he when you can take guys running backs, obviously he's ran a few into the ground to the point where they kind of can't really have careers at that point. But what I'm trying to like get at is Andy Reid has had great quarterbacks. Shanahan's had great running backs. And Shanahan's got the best running back in football right now. Andy Reid's got the best quarterback in football right now. So it kind of comes down to, in my eyes, who's going to use that weapon better in this game.
That's a good point.
And for Shanahan, yeah, he has a second-year quarterback. He's had some subpar and par quarterbacks in his career, but he's always utilized the run game very effectively, very well. And it calls to mind, like, it makes me feel like whatever is given to Kyle, he can make it work.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's extremely successful, that's kind of like a different story, right? But he can make it work and he can at least keep up. In the season where, coming out of the Super Bowl loss against the Chiefs, where the Niners were terrible because of historical injuries, like they still only lost most of those games within 7 points. And he was running with third stringers for the most part. Like, and that to me was like, it really showed me Kyle, whatever he has, he finds a way to be competitive. And so from that aspect of it, yeah, I trust him, and I would be really interested to see if Brock were to develop into like an actual amazing quarterback where you can like trust him to do Mahomes like things. What could he do if he had the top quarterback and the top running back, right? Like that's kind of, yeah, it's a good question.
No, and that was kind of the point I was kind of going for. So I do think Brock will have time to develop, and I do think the right move is to let Kyle be the one to develop him because he just has such a successful track record that it'll be a testament to him too if he grows Brock into something even more, that when you do start to lose some of these weapons, that Brock can be the one to carry that team once it's time, like to a different level. So that's great. So any final thoughts on the game? We haven't done our scores yet. Do you have a score for this game?
I do have a score.
Okay.
So the Super Bowl will be played on February 11th, which is 2/11/2024. Okay. So do an exercise for me with me for 1 second.
Okay.
11 plus 2 is 13. Brock
Correct.
Purdy's number
Oh God.
is 13, right?
Okay.
So the Niners are going to win 24-20 because it's 2024.
Okay, there we go. Okay, I wasn't sure
You see
exactly
it?
where
You
you were
see
going
it?
with that.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
2/11/2024.
That's a good score too. I actually really
Yeah.
like that a lot. And I did pick the Niners to win this game as well. As much as obviously the objective of this episode was for me to talk about the Chiefs, but that doesn't mean that they were my pick. I struggled really hard when deciding who I thought was going to win this game. And maybe it is my heart just telling me maybe I don't want the Chiefs to win. And for the sake of for the spirit energy that I'm putting out there, Chiefs Kingdom all the way. I will be riding with Chiefs Kingdom for the Super Bowl, just to, put that juju out there, see what's up. But I do have the Niners winning, and I would say it would be 27-24. I think
That's a good score too.
they're gonna have to get up there, and I believe they can. And it's a Super Bowl; anything can happen. So I think that there's no weather going to be involved. It's in the dome. I think the offenses can let it fly. And again, it's to your point, if the Niners jump out early and take kind of control of the pace, if they play on their terms, it's going to be a higher scoring game. If the Chiefs play on their terms, it's going to be more of the score that you presented. So that's where I can see it. But I think the Niners have a good chance to take it to them. And yeah, we'll settle it 27-24. It's going to be a freaking epic game, and I'm excited for it. I'm excited for it, dude.
I'm nervous. I'm excited. I'm ecstatic. Like, there's so many emotions going into it. And there is an extreme trauma for me watching them lose 2 Super Bowls now. Like, and more recently, just that Kansas City loss.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a freaking revenge game.
It is, in so many ways.
Have to get this. The Niners have to win this game. You have to get it done.
The vindication.
Go get the 6th.
Yeah. And the vindication you guys would feel with Brock and everything. The storylines are going crazy. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And Random, how excited are you for Usher?
Yeah, I'll be re-upping on whatever my drink is or any snack that I'm having. Might even go get some food at halftime. I'm not gonna watch Usher.
Fair enough. Hey, that's fine.
Gonna watch Usher.
Hey,
I'd rather watch Taylor Swift at halftime. No joke.
So what are the odds she makes just a surprise appearance in like one song?
0.
Yeah, I know. I think Usher did a deal where he said that he would only do it if he got a longer halftime show too. So I think,
really,
yeah, we'll see what happens. We're going to see what happens, what kind of songs he brings out. If he brings out his classics, I'm going to be all in on that. That was my time. So I'm excited for that.
Right.
So we'll see what happens. But yeah, dude, this was lit. Do you have any final thoughts before we go?
Go stunt on these boys.
Yes, sir. Bang,
Just
bang,
go
baby.
Get them. Bang, bang.
Oh. So it's great, dude. So with that being said, this was episode 28, special Super Bowl edition of the Behind the Back podcast. Ben no longer has to do any more pregame prep. This is it. This is it, dude. We waited all season for this. Shout out to us for having our first NFL season under our belts. Yes. This is really cool. And, we're really, I'm excited to, now we're going to transition into the nitty gritty of basketball and off-season talk. And, we'll obviously break down the game, the results, our emotions, how, we'll do Ben's beer count and everything like that. But, for afterwards.
I will say if the 49ers lose this game, it's been really fun, Marcos. This podcast has been awesome. But I will no longer be able to show my face here. I'm going to have to go into a hole and cry for probably a year or so until I can show my face out in public again.
I know exactly how you feel. I thought it was going to be, Eagles, Niners making it as far as they could. And my team gave up early. So I'm glad that at least one of our teams was able to make it for content purposes. And, we get to have some emotional attachment to this game. So I am excited to see. It's going to be interesting to see what happens next week for sure. So
definitely.
Yeah, so you guys can hit us up at behindthebackpod13@gmail.com. You can hit us up on any of our social medias, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, Facebook. You can find us on YouTube as well. Check out any of our episodes that we've posted previously, or check out our episode now if you haven't already, I guess, for the audio listeners. I should start doing this beforehand. So for any of the audio listeners, you can catch our YouTube videos if you want to see our faces and our reactions to maybe Ben crying, maybe Ben not, being here, and maybe I'll be doing a solo pod next week. We'll see what happens, guys. But with that being said, bang, bang, baby. Good luck, brother. I'll be with you all the way on this one as the Chiefs Kingdom representative.
Bang, bang, baby. Let's go, Niner gang. Let's go, faithful. You guys get it done.
Yes, sir. All right, guys. We'll talk to you next week. Have fun this weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl, guys. Peace.
Yes, sir. Peace.